Understood, we're hearing like that.
You're running full speed, but the markets are faster. Quasar Markets Live brings the world's top financial minds to you. Everything you need to know in one place. Learn from elite educators and gain a competitive edge, leveling the playing field for you. Join the conversation. Quasar Markets Live.
Good morning, Quasar Markets Live. Howard here with your morning update. We got some January housing numbers coming out right now, so we'll see what happens there. But, bigger news has been really focused on the gas prices. We're going to literally start right there. That's a first for us, right? And you can see here that WTI ticking back up at, I just realized it's a monthly chart, at 91.50 here this morning. So we can see 3 days, higher highs, higher lows, and actually sort of gapped up here this morning. So again, the war continues to play havoc on markets because it plays havoc on oil and gas, which brings in headlines in a couple of the market. I think it was Market Watch was, is it going to be stagflation or recession? So they're not even giving it a chance that we can get out of here without either of them. But, some key things to keep in mind is that the International Energy Agency yesterday did agree to release about 400 million barrels from their reserves. It did drop the price pretty quickly on that news. You can see here, this was right about when that came through, and it was a pretty big drop. So we'll see. Does that, does it do enough? Most of the talk is it only just buys you a little bit of time, and the fact also that it would take, I think it was 120 days or so to get them all out. So it's not even, so a couple of things to keep in mind is that, number one, it only provides a temporary respite, so to speak. And number two, is that it also is going to take a while to get out there. 3 more ships were attacked in the Persian Gulf overnight, so that definitely has problems there. The U.S. is hoping to get tanker traffic in the Strait moving again by providing insurance to ships transiting the passage. The U.S. International Development Finance Corp said yesterday that the insurance giant Chubb will be the lead underwriter for a $20 billion program. But again, I heard some folks that are more experts than I am definitely in this subject mention that it doesn't do enough. It doesn't protect for the cleanup of oil spills that could come from this and some other things. So maybe not as much help as we wanted, like I said. So we'll see how that works out. Yesterday's news was CPI. It didn't really affect the markets too much. It was right in line with what they thought. So we'll keep an eye there. Otherwise, the other real big, that's the biggest news. From there, we've got some earnings reports we'll go through and other things. But, you know, the majority of the news has really been focused on the war, as you can imagine. And depending on the tweet is depending on how your trade sort of goes at this time. So it's a little rough out there, without a doubt. Let's take a look at the indices here. The NASDAQ through the QQQs here, the triple Qs, is at 603.70, down from yesterday's close at 607.90. But that doesn't really tell you the story, because quite honestly, you know, the fall really happened. I need this on. Hold it 1 second here. It's still not. I need my other chart. Sorry. Hold it 1 second here. Now we're talking. And the reason I want to show you that is that it's a little bit deceiving in the numbers, because what happened was, while we closed yesterday at 607.69, way up here, we then in the post market, you know, last night, that's when things sort of went to the downside. So we're above where we hit that close last night in the, you know, at 8 o'clock at 602.97. Does look like we're trying to get there, but I just wanted to point that out. Sometimes these numbers can be deceiving, and this is a day where those numbers are a little deceiving. Anything sort of above that 602.88 would be, you know, opening above where the actual close was in my mind. Same thing on the S&P, as you can see, you know, as the tensions ratcheted up, as news of attacks ratcheted up, that's where things dropped. And the same on the Dow. So that same setup across all three of them there. And then the same thing when we look at WTI, a little bit of a different story. But what you see again is that you fell from about 10:30 last night till about 3:45, and then we've been picking up steam since. So WTI towards the highs, you know, of the morning. So again, you know, the numbers are a little different because this stuff has been trading pretty crazily with some volatility overnight. Keep that in mind. Speaking of volatility, you know where I'm going next. My favorite index for that, the VIX. And now I can get back into this one. VIX here at, again, spiking towards highs of the morning. So 25.95. We got as low as 24.60. This has us at the highs of the day. So volatility definitely jumping back in here. We look at advanced decline, fairly negative. So we see a broad sweep of about 1,570. More stocks trading to the downside than the upside, and the tick by tick move has been fairly negative throughout most of the morning, but not too far off. When we look at other things that I keep an eye on here, the $1.9949, so ticking back up to the higher side here, and highs that we've seen. If we can break through that 99.70, it'd be highs of the year. So again, so far, dollar gaining strength, people putting money into the dollar. Gold is still in the right about the same area. Daily chart, 4 or 5 days, it's really sort of been right around this 51.50 mark or so. We're at 51.70 right now. And then when we look at silver, same type of situation, mostly sideways, consolidation trade at about the $87 range. Bitcoin and Ethereum are moving up here this morning. They had a nice run. Now they have been under a little bit more pressure here in the last half hour or so, since about 7:45. They were making a move to the upside. My general view there is there's a pretty big liquidation, heat map liquidation candle at sitting right around 71.5. It did look like that's what we were going to try to, the bulls were going to try to push it to that mark, and that could be sort of the area that you look for a run from. But like I said, we're sort of falling down, a little bit of a double bottom here, so maybe we get some follows the linear regression back up. We'll see what we get there. Good news is, again, ETF inflows into Bitcoin were strong again. So every day this week so far, we have seen inflows into it. So institutions are stepping into Bitcoin. Another stronger takeaway or positive I had was that sort of seeped into Ethereum overnight. So is the positivity around Bitcoin starting to move to the other coins? That's what we'll take a look at. And Solana also had about 1.7 million in inflows. So its first positive day in a little bit too, when it comes to that, you know, US institutional look, or that's what most of the ETFs sort of look at. World markets are pretty much down across the board here overnight. So not a good sign there. But again, most of them, I believe, are, well, now they've pulled back down. When I was looking at it earlier, they had been sort of moving back to the upside. So again, something, I don't think it's something, I think we all know what it is. It's just the same thing. The, you know, tweet analysis of what's going on in the war drives that I'm trying to see. U.S. Navy not ready to escort tankers, says the energy secretary. So that seems to be what's talking now. I have seen a lot of the folks from defense, treasury, commerce, energy, all those little sectors there in theory are all sort of hitting the news stations today. So tweet analysis is definitely going to be one of the main things to keep an eye on for sure. From there, those are the big major things we keep an eye on. After that, we're going to take a look at the sectors of the S&P and see where do we think there could be strength and weakness today. So right now, we're already feeling it's a little bit of risk off, right? Energy seems to be the only thing in the green. It was up 2.5% yesterday. It's up another 75 basis points today. What does that lead us to believe? That's risk off. That means money is flowing back into oil and gas companies. So let's take a look at some of those. CVX, Chevron, up about, 3.5% the last 2 days. Let's take a look at Mr. Buffett's favorite, Occidental. Again, up almost 5% here in the last 2 days. So again, oil, gas, Exxon, XOM, up about 3%. And lastly, let's take a look at Diamondback Energy through FANG, up about 1% today. So again, gas and energy are catching a bid this morning so far. Laggards are all the other sectors not that name that. So definitely there. And I do see that Ida's saying, wow, Ida, wow. Yeah, 529 for a premium. I know she's in California. So yeah, absolutely, definitely, without a doubt, the things to keep an eye on. Yeah, unfortunately there. That's been the driver. And like I said, all the other sectors in general not doing so great. Just trying to see. Financials are down the most. Oh yeah, that's the second. I just feel I hate being the bearer of bad news. I like to be an optimistic person. But another thing we got to keep an eye here on is private credit. Blue Owl Capital under more pressure here, down another 7% between yesterday and pre-markets today. And that continues to be just a huge drain on the markets. It doesn't just have them drawn up. We've seen other names in that area. Apollo, they're down again almost 4% in the last 2 days. Blackstone, whoops, down almost 5% the last 2 days. And now we'll do BlackRock. down almost a little over 3%. This is on fears about more cracks in the private credit industry, and the fact that a few of the major banks like JP Morgan are marking them down as collateral for loans or in people's portfolios. So that markdown has definitely hurt the market without a doubt. Some single names that are moving up, interestingly or not, it is a boost for parts of the farming industry. And we do see CF, one of the gainers here this morning, which is, if you don't know, a nitrogen and ammonia fertilizer company. Stocks gained over 20% since the war began on February 28th and is just off of its all-time highs. In fact, it's going to open up at an all-time high. The reason that this is that not only does the Strait of Hormuz cause a crucial role in oil and gas, it also plays crucial roles in the global fertilizer trade. Around 25 to 35% of the global trade of fertilizer materials pass through the strait. So with that being done, it should benefit CF Industries. And again, you know, there's a couple of other names that you can look at there that are up. I think Mosaic's the other one today. Yeah, up 16% here in the last 2 days. Again, these are names that are up because of that being, you know, sort of like the gas and oil companies. When their prices get increased, they pass along those prices. They add a few pennies for themselves, and it increases profitability for them. So we are definitely seeing that in play also. Let's take a look through the Mag 7. We haven't really talked about them the last couple of days. NVIDIA sitting 185, so right in the middle of its zone. You know, recently, to me, it's been a buy anytime we get it down into that 170, 174 area, and it's been a little bit of a heated trade. Anything above that 196 seems to be the sell-off point. But we do see it making a nice little move up, you know, since its earnings. At the end of February, it's made a nice move to the upside. It sort of quietly just makes little moves every day up, you know, again, another 68 basis points yesterday. So again, NVIDIA has been looking pretty strong. You can see it bottomed out with everything else. Well, that's actually not what I wanted to look at. This is what I want to look at. It bottomed out in between 320 yesterday and about 420, and now it's picking back up in the early morning market hours. So we'll keep an eye there. Apple, I got to go to this chart. This is what's screwing me up. I know what I got to do is just hit this. Boom. Now we're looking good. Now we're back. There we go. I didn't have my extended trading on my trading view. So Apple, down again this morning, slightly, about 1/4 percentage point, pretty flat yesterday. Apple, again, sort of to the lower side of its recent trading range. Sort of been a value in that 250 zone recently. And again, we've seen anything in that 275 to 280 area has been where we've seen a repeated sell-off here. So that's the range you're still looking at on Apple. Google up about 0.5 percentage point yesterday, now down more than that today. This one's been under more pressure than some of the others down here. It's pretty much still towards the downside of its, you know, of the linear regression, trying to work its way back up. But Google here, been under more pressure. Microsoft definitely has been under more pressure than the others. Here we're at 403.06. You know, after double topping back in October, this one's been under the most pressure. They're also under a little bit of pressure with the government today. I did see the CTO from the Department of War was on talking about the Anthropic, and they weren't happy with Microsoft sort of backing Anthropic. So they're under a little bit of pressure. Amazon, another one that since its earnings, it dropped down that day, but since then it had been making a nice move back. But we do see last 3 days rejected at that mid spot on the linear regression and pulling back down to the downside. So definitely still stress on Amazon here. Man, I think it's a value in that 203 zone or so for sure. Meta trading pretty much racing yesterday's gain. This one's sort of done its own thing. It's really been in a consolidation zone since about the mid-February, as you can see, sort of tight range, not really much going on. People are weighing the CapEx spend that they make versus the new invention, the new innovation that they're announcing. That's what sort of has spiked them and dropped them down, but they're sort of range bound. They would be sort of in a no man's land for me, neither positive or negative on them at this price point. Tesla back down towards that 400, where again, I do think they become a value in between 385 and 400 for sure. But it's been a little quiet. This is another stock that's just been sort of quiet lately. Doesn't usually spend. Elon's not usually that quiet for that long. So we'll see if that changes here anytime soon. Netflix, which, gapped up after getting out of the or losing out on the Warner Brothers Discovery bid. It made a nice 4 or 5 day run. Now it's actually pulling back, getting top heavy here in this 94 zone here. That's not a good looking top of a daily chart, to be honest with you. And you could convince me that they want to close that gap, which would take them down towards that 86 area here. So I would say Netflix under a little bit of pressure here. If you see any weakness today, they definitely have room down towards that 90 area, and then further break down to fill the gap to the downside. A lot of these gaps like to get filled. So that's a look at some of the megas that we keep an eye on there. Let's take a look a little bit at the movers this morning. A couple of the biggest movers to the upside. One that you guys know I'm a fan of, FLY. After having their launch yesterday, this thing has moved up nicely back towards that 24.25, 24.50 area. This stock's been pretty beaten up. It has based itself nicely here in February in this zone. So, this breakout is also pretty solid from the technical zone. Got to get across 25.31. If you do get across that, that's when you could see the next move to the upside. But that's going to be pressure till then. Above that 25.32, look for a nice run here. Got as high as 24.75 in the pre-market. It is pulling a little bit back here from that area. Another one that is moving up here is Poet, P-O-E-T, on the morning run, making a nice move to the upside here. Semiconductor company gapping up from 744 to 813 here. So keep an eye on that one. I mentioned Mosaic earlier. They are also towards the upside here. Fertilizer company up at about $30.75. Another fertilizer company is CF at 125.83. You can keep an eye on. Dow gets sort of a push up in that area also. So we'll keep an eye on that. Then towards the downside, and then some drone names, OMDS up nicely here in the pre-market at 10.12. Energy names are pretty big here on this part of the list also. We already talked about Occidental up nicely here so far. APA Energy up nicely so far. EOG up nicely so far. So those are ones that are moving up here as gas and oil move up. Do you see, like I said, some other semi names? Actually, that's Tower Semiconductor. Yep. They're moving up here this morning. Didn't see, I wonder if there's any new news there. I didn't see anything on them. This has to do with lightweight wave logics. So it looks like lightwave logic shares climbed about 27% Thursday after the company said it entered a development agreement with Tower Semiconductor to advance high-speed optical modulators. So high-end chips moving the needle here. Good morning, Zora. How are you doing today? Hope all is well. So those are some movers to the upside. On the other side of that, the laggard so far this morning. Netscope is down here about, 20%. This is after the cybersecurity company said it expects a first quarter adjusted loss of 6 to 7 cents. Analysts were calling for a loss, so it shouldn't be that much of a surprise. But when they reiterated it, has it moved into the downside and still moving to the downside here. So Netscope under some definite pressure so far this morning. One that you don't usually see move to the upside is TEAM. Been beaten up tremendously. Team up about 65 basis points. It was up much higher earlier. But this is one of those ones up on what is really bad news, up on the fact they're going to lay a bunch of people off. They say AI is going to solve a lot of their problems and they're going to replace people with AI. Keep in mind, this is a company that's down from $330 down to $75. So when you talk about software companies, this one has probably been beaten up about as bad as any out there. So definitely one that is, this little bump doesn't do much to erase months of downward movement there. Another interesting one there that we don't cover that much is Bumble. The dating app, I guess we call it, right, is up at about $3.52, pumped at about 21% after they reported a strong adjusted EBITDA. Still losing money, but they beat their top line revenue estimates, and they beat their analyst consensus there also. So that has them moving up. Other names moving up, one of my favorite companies, Petco, just because I like dog companies in general. Woof up here today at about 276, up 15% after their earnings. They saw better than expected guidance for the current quarter in the year. They expect their adjusted EBITDA to come in between 92 to 94 million for the first quarter, which was above even the higher end of the estimates. So that has them moving up nicely. Another name that I do like also, over there over the weekend, getting the little one some new cleats for her T-ball season. Dick's Sporting Goods up about 5.73% after the retailer posted fourth quarter results that did beat analyst expectations again. Company earned an adjusted $3.45 a share on revenue of $6.23 billion. So again, top line beat, bottom line beat, makes everybody happy so far. On the other side of that, I had mentioned yesterday morning that UIP, which is UiPath, was going to have earnings after the bell. Those earnings did not go well. They failed to impress Wall Street. They, I think, had a double beat, right? Yeah, they did. They had a double beat, top line revenue and EPS, but that wasn't enough to make the markets happy. And they're down about 10% here this morning. Another one under pressure also. Again, there's a lot more under pressure than moving to the upside, unfortunately, today, is Dollar General, down over 7% in the last two trading sessions after the discount retailer issued underwhelming full-year guidance. They expect earnings per share to come in around $7.10 to $7.35. And they only see same-store growth sales of about 2.5%. a little bit light versus analyst expectations. So that's what's got the markets moving so far this morning. As I said, well, everything is in the red when it goes to the indices. You know, it does matter to frame it with the fact that while we are trading below the 4 p.m. close, we are trading currently above the 8 p.m. post-market close on all three. Well, let me see that before I say it. Yeah, slightly. SPY is threatening to go under it. Dow actually is under it. So the Dow and the SPY are below. Now they are actually below the overnight close, whereas the Qs are still maintaining a beat above that. Financials, let's take one last look here before I take off at the sectors. And again, financials getting hit the hardest, and that is due to some more credit scares when it comes to those private credit being marked down across the markets there. Okay, everybody, BigBeat is still on vacation, cruising around the globe. So I am solo today. Mr. Flanagan will be back in tomorrow with me. I am going to go on with that. Have a great day, everybody.